Really quick, if you haven't seen my most recent episode on Urza Chief Artificer, well, you know what? Another Urza? Like, yeah, we've seen what, 2 or kind of like 3 today already, which is kind of crazy. Yeah, make sure you check that one out at some point, but don't leave just yet. Because on this episode, well, I mean, I don't know how else to say it, but that is a really cool card. So, with all that said, well, first up, blame Eddie in the comments below, because although Eddie just does a great job and helps out a lot, especially during spoiler season, well, blame Eddie for, yeah, any mistakes I make, of course. And that there's, too many spoiler seasons back to back to back. Actually, blame Wizards for that. Anyways, blame Eddie. Let's jump into it. So, Queen Kayla bin-Kroog is here. A 2/3 human noble that costs 1 red, white, and it has pay 4, tap, discard all the cards in your hand, then draw that many cards. You may choose an artifact or creature card with mana value 1 you discard this way. Then do the same for artifact or creature cards with mana values 2 and 3. Return those cards to the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery. So, many players out there have been waiting quite a long time for a Kayla bin-Kroog card, and I don't think she's disappointing. This is a very, very interesting and unique ability, and one that has a lot of powerful applications. First up, I mean, this can just be a great way to wheel away cards, for other cards. If you, don't like your hand all that much, great, just wheel away and draw that many cards, and yeah, replace your hand essentially. While also, of course, also getting any additional value out of, those creatures or artifacts that have a mana value of 1, 2, or 3, or at least just say 1 of each. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, if you are able to hit all 3 of those mana values, you essentially are also saving mana too. I mean, instead of actually just playing those, you're just paying 4 mana to get 6 total mana worth of value into play. I mean, discarded and then, into play from your graveyard, which also has a lot of implications and a lot of powerful things that you can do with it too. Now, keep in mind, you can only activate this as a sorcery. So, actually, I did have some cards like Thran Turbine and Braids of Fire in mind. And then I was like, oh, great. Yeah, okay, Wizards put that there to just, ruin the fun. But I mean, this is still a very fun commander. Even with that restriction, I don't believe it's necessary. But, this is the day and age where Wizards is just like, oh, let's just slap that on here. But, that Urza card over there, let's just make it insanely powerful. Regardless, though, even with that restriction, yeah, you can do a lot of really fun, a lot of really exciting, and a lot of really interesting and off-the-wall things. So if you, like me, are excited about this commander, well, make sure you check out my link in the description below that has a list of the cards I'm talking about on this episode, and consider picking up some of those sooner rather than later, because when a new, exciting commander like this one is spoiled, sometimes cards that work well with it tend to go up in price sooner rather than later. And now with all that said, let's jump into the cards. So, the first card that actually came to my mind is Surly Badgersore, and yeah, I think this card has a lot of potential with this brand new commander. It's a 3/3 Badger Dinosaur because that's a thing. Anyways, whenever you discard a creature card, play +1 counter on Surly Badgersore. Whenever you discard a land card, create treasure token. Whenever you discard a non-creature, non-land card, Surly Badgersore fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. Again, with this commander, you're going to be discarding a lot of cards a lot of the time throughout the game. And Surly Badgersore can give you a lot of value from that. Again, when you're discarding those creature cards, you make Surly Badgersore bigger. When you're discarding non-creature, non-land cards, you can have Surly Badgersore take out your opponent's creatures. And again, the bigger it is, the more creatures you can be able to take out. And by discarding land cards, you can get treasure tokens. So yeah, you can actually even kind of get your mana back, or part of your mana back, or even more. Actually, you can net mana too if you discard enough land cards with all those treasure tokens you're going to be making. So yeah, I'm definitely excited for the interaction between these two cards. And yeah, speaking of another great interaction, let's talk about Glinthorn Buccaneer. It says, whenever you discard a card, Glinthorn Buccaneer deals 1 damage to each opponent. So just for an example, let's just say, okay, we've got a full grip of cards. Let's say we have 7 cards in our hand. We pay 4, we tap, we discard our hand, we draw 7. We discarded 7 cards, so that's 7 damage to each opponent just for doing that, on top of, again, the additional benefit that we get from maybe even getting 3 things into play essentially for free. Yeah, that can add up a lot throughout the game, though, with all that damage. So, I mean, have fun. And of course, also have fun on the other end of things with Psychosis Crawler, which says whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses 1 life. So again, you can get benefits and then also punish your opponents when you're discarding, and you can also punish your opponents when you're drawing cards as well. But of course, you are not done punishing your opponents just yet, because you can also punish them with something like Impact Tremors, which says whenever a creature in its battlefield under your control, Impact Tremors deals 1 damage to each opponent. So again, when you are, essentially not cheating those cards into play, but again, utilizing your commander's ability to discard creature cards and then bring them into play, you can get up to 3 creatures, essentially, if you've got one that's 1 mana, one that's 2, and one that's 3. Get them all into play. That's going to be 3 damage each opponent with Impact Tremors just for, sneaking those creatures into play. So yeah, in Boros, of course, there are plenty of effects out there that can, punish your opponents, essentially, for you utilizing this commander to the fullest. Speaking of which, how about Fuming Effigy, a 4/3 spirit that says whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, Fuming Effigy deals 1 damage to each opponent. So no matter what we put into our graveyard, again, whether that's going to be an artifact or a creature that we're going to bring back, well, we get to actually ping everyone as well every single time we're doing that. Keep in mind, it does say 1 or more, but still that damage can add up throughout the game. Speaking of which, in a somewhat similar way, there's Stonebound Mentor, which says whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, scry 1. So again, scrying is not card advantage, but is fantastic card selection, and this can really help us out throughout the game. Just, essentially, hey, whatever our next draw is going to be, let's just set ourselves up with that, again, just by utilizing our commander. And we can also take advantage of, again, those cards leaving our graveyard with a card like Quintorius Field Historian. It says spirits you control get +1/+0, which is lovely because this can make a ton of spirits. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. So again, no matter what that card is that's leaving our graveyard, an artifact or a creature, and again, if we've got multiple, we only get this trigger once, but that's okay, we are getting a 4/2 spirit. 3/2, but gets the pump. You know what I mean? Regardless, in a somewhat similar way, there's Desecrated Tomb. Whenever one or more creature cards leave your graveyard, create a 1/1 black bat creature token with flying. So this one is more specific to creatures, but yeah, if we have at least one of those cards that is, hitting our graveyard, then leaving it, that is a creature, we get this effect. Next up, how about Currency Converter, though? It says whenever you discard a card, you may exile that card from your graveyard. Now that may is, of course, very important because there are other somewhat similar cards to this one that don't say may, and essentially that would, cancel out, you being able to bring those creatures or, artifacts back into play. But since this one does say may, you can essentially, allow those other ones, go back into play, and you can just exile any ones that you don't need. Like, lands or enchantments or, creatures or artifacts that have a converted mana cost above 3. Anyways, you can also pay 2 to tap and draw a card and discard a card, which is nice, but also you can tap and put a card, exile the Currency Converter into your graveyard. If it's a land card, you get a treasure token. If it's a non-land card, create 2/2 black rogue creature token. So this can provide you a lot of value throughout the game. Just imagine, utilizing those lands that you're discarding to make treasure tokens every single turn. And speaking of treasure tokens, Dockside Extortionist. Incredibly expensive card, potentially banned in the future too. Keep an eye out for that. Anyways, a 1/2 Goblin Pirate for 1 in red that says when enters the battlefield, create X treasure tokens for X the number of artifacts and enchantments your opponents control. Yeah, this can make you an absurd amount of treasure tokens out of nowhere. And of course, with this commander again, this is one that you can essentially, again, cheat into play because it has a mana value of 2. So this can be one of the 3 creatures you cheat into play, and you can very easily get way more mana out of this interaction than what you actually put into it. So yeah, Dockside is great in a lot of decks, but yeah, also very good in this deck because this commander can really take advantage of it. Some other creatures, though, that work well with this commander are ones like Mentor the Meek, Imperial Recruiter, and Village Bellringer. Mentor the Meek says whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 1. If you do, draw a card. Chances are, if you're going to be leaning really heavily into creatures that have a mana value of 1, 2, or 3, yeah, you're going to have a decent amount that meet that requirement for their power. So with this, again, if you've got 3 creatures that you're essentially getting into play with your commander, and they all have a power of 2 or less, pay 3 mana, draw 3 cards, what's not to love about that? Which, of course, then allows you to discard even more cards the next time with your commander's ability. Or how about Imperial Recruiter, another great ETB. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for a creature card with power 2 or less, reveal it, put in your hand, then shuffle. Yeah, again, just another chance to actually go get another creature that probably has a mana value of 1, 2, or 3 that you can sneak into play with your commander. Dockside Extortionist does have, 1 power, so it meets that requirement. Have fun going and getting that. Or how about Village Bellringer? It's a 1/4 with flash that says when it enters the battlefield, untap all creatures you control. So obviously this can help, with any of your creatures, by giving them kind of like pseudo vigilance when it comes to attacking, or, any kind of tap activated abilities, of course, including your commanders. So you can even utilize your commander multiple times in a turn thanks to something like this. Speaking of which, how about 1,000-Year Elixir, which says you may activate abilities of creatures you control as though those creatures had haste, and by paying 1, you can tap to untap target creature. So you can utilize your commander's ability right away, you don't have to wait for it, and you can utilize it a second time in the same turn thanks to this. And of course, again, with all these cards, just keep in mind which of these artifacts, cost 3 or less. There's plenty of fantastic ones that you can utilize, and again, basically get out for free with your commander, or again, get out as part of that activation. Now, Alhemret's Archive does not meet that 3 mana requirement, but yeah, at 5 mana, this card is incredible, especially in this kind of a deck. First up, if you would gain life, you gain twice that much life instead. Now that's nice. I mean, probably not all that relevant, but the relevant part is, if you would draw a card except the first one you draw on each of your draw steps, draw 2 cards instead. So again, activate your commander. Discard your hand, draw twice as many cards as you had. So now instead of just replacing the cards that you have in your hand with other cards, you're drawing twice as many, you're just doubling your hand size. Speaking of which, yeah, I mean, if you've got, Reliquary Tower or, Thought Vessel, ways to give you, no maximum hand size, that can work very well with this in combination with your commander, essentially just discarding twice as many cards basically every single time. It can get absurd. Another kind of a card you might want to consider, though, is a card like Heartstone, which helps out in a different way. It says, well, okay, maybe I should say it's Oracle Text Raids. Activated abilities of creatures cost 1 less to activate. This effect can't reduce the mana that cost to less than 1 mana. So instead of our commander's ability costing 4 each time, it only costs 3, and yeah, that can save us a lot of mana throughout the game. Again, especially if we've got ways to untap our commander and utilize it again in a single turn. But now as this episode is coming to a close, it's time for me to give you my final thoughts on Queen Kayla bin-Kroog. Yeah, I really like the design of this commander. I think it's a very unique ability and one that you can utilize in a lot of really cool ways. I mean, again, you can utilize it any way from like, a surly Badgersore, or a Glithorn Buccaneer, or even Psychosis Crawler. Or, when you're not just punishing your opponents with those kind of things, I mean, punish them by making them watch how many treasures you can make with, your Dockside Extortionist, which you just got out, just because, right? I mean, not me, because that card is nowhere near budget. Anyways, though, make sure you check out the card list link in the description below for the cards I talked about on this episode. And of course, make sure you're staying tuned to this channel and that you check out the other quick takes and spoilers from all the other spoiler seasons. I mean, including the other 3 Brothers War cards that I talked about today. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So the comments below, let me know your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support.